Okie dokie. Well, we're going to take you on a quickie tour of iPhoto. I'm sure some of you have used it before. You probably have a bunch of events. I've tossed a few things in a screencast here so I can do some editing really quickly and run you through some of the tools. So these are pictures that need help in one way or another. So I'm going to click down here on the pencil for editing and see what kind of editing tools we come up with. There we go. Might take a minute. I have several thousand photos in my iPhoto, so sometimes it's a little slow. Alrighty. Over there. And over there. Okay. So, here we have lovely Christmas photo. We can make this better. How do we make this better? First and foremost, by cropping. The crop tool is your friend. If you're going to output your image to a 4:6 photo, please make sure that you have this constrained to proportions, okay, to 4:6, or if you're doing a 5:7 or you're doing an 8, whatever, constrain it. If you are not, then you have lots of options. If you're putting it online, it doesn't matter, or you might need it to be square. So use this tool as necessary. I, however, don't care because I'm not going to print it, because I hardly print anything. But I don't need a bunch of this stuff. I certainly don't need the ceiling. I don't need the little bit of extra window over here. This is a lovely part of the wall that I probably don't need. I don't need the blanket over the chair. I like the tree. I don't need that window. Look, third lines. Haha. I am going to have to be stuck with part... Well, maybe not. I might have to be stuck with part of that chair. Let's see. Let me leave the part of the chair in there for a second and show you a couple things about it. Anyway, I kind of like this cropping a little better than what we had before. So, I'm going to be done, and that's part 1. Part 2, normally for me, is also then straightening, or sometimes you straighten first and then crop. But we'll see that on another one. I have no red eye. This enhance thing, I'm going to do it and then undo it, because I'm never a big fan of what it does, generally. It brightens things, heightens the contrast, doesn't really work for me. So I'm going to undo that. And I don't need to rotate this. So that is pretty much all I need here, and I don't really have any retouches to do. However, I'm going to skip to adjust, and this is where you can actually edit something. I don't necessarily want to change the exposure. It does need to be a little brighter, but look what happened to that chair. Okay, so let's see how we can change this without blowing out our highlights. Your best plan is this shadows slider right here. Makes your shadow areas lighter. Now, it looks a little washed out. Bear with me. We're going to open that up some. We don't have any real blacks though, right? So I'm going to go up to contrast and increase the contrast a little bit at a time until I get something a little more fun. So that's not too bad. Now, I'm also going to my highlights, and I'm going to bring that down a little bit. Not too far, but you'll notice this chair is looking a little less bright. It's maybe a little yellow, but it's a little less bright. So that's another option. Now, the overall color cast here is not horrible, because there was a flash involved. That's why the chair is so very bright. So the color balance isn't too shabby. But you might want to whiten the wall. I happen to know the wall is very white. So you can add a little blue there. If you like the sort of warm thing going on, or you want to warm it up even to be a little bit on the pink side of things, you can do that, sort of that interior warm glow thing. You can mess around with the tints and the temperature. So those are some options for you. I tend to not sharpen too much. We can, down here in the left-hand corner, you can zoom in here. This is, well, it's got some issues, but I cropped it a lot. Denoise will actually smooth things out a little bit, which you may or may not want. It sort of makes it look almost blurry again. But if you have a lot of color noise, this is a helpful thing. And what I mean by that is little dots of color, particularly in shadow areas. That can be helpful. Sharpening, however, I'm going to over-sharpen here. things get really wonky. You usually get these like highlight lines around things. When you print these out, if you print these out, you get very weird edges and lines on high contrast areas. See how these lights aren't softly glowing anymore? They're like neon. That's what sharpness does. So I generally don't sharpen much of anything, unless I'm really trying to compensate for a super bad picture. Saturate, you could. Those are the kinds of things that we tend to overuse on things like sunsets. You can use this to desaturate if you want to, if you wanted a nice black and white, or you wanted a sort of medium, sort of antique-y feel. You can do that with some of the effects settings, but that's your super quick version. Now, let me skip through here and use a couple more of these tools to show you classroom applications. Oh, I know, the next one's actually family photo. You get to see me. There we go. Okay, in this photo, we need help again, mostly in the quick fixes department. Again, we can make this look pretty good with a crop and or a straighten. Now, I'm going to use the sides. I'm going to do straighten first because I want to use these walls and beams to help me figure out what straight really is. Because I know this house is plumb and level, so we're going to make that upright. And then I'm going to tilt it. I'm going to see what happens if I have the top level with one of these lines or if I do the verticals. I think I'm going to go with the verticals. Like that. I know the top's a little wonky, but we're going to go with that. Then, whoops. I clicked on it twice. That was a mistake. That, editing. There we go. So, straighten is good. Now we're going to crop. Now, the good news is, you can see how much we had to straighten. You can then crop and make this a much better photo. I would have highly recommended zooming in when it was shot, but you take what you can get when somebody else is taking the pictures. Ta-da! Yay! Much better photo! That's what we're aiming for. And then you could go back in and straighten again, because when you have that line at your edge, oh, please go back and straighten, right? So much better. And there you have it. Not too bad. Then you can go in and do any other adjustments you want to, but that's doable. And we've looked at that long enough. Here's a classroom example. This was a sketch drawing that the students needed to put in their e-portfolio. But when they shot it, the pencil didn't show up very much. So in adjustments, this is where we have a couple of options. One, we can boost the contrast, and that will help a little bit. However, that does also blow out the highlights a little bit. And you can see as I'm moving this, the blue thing on the top is moving around. That's your histogram. This is your black point. There's nothing on there really that's black, but watch what happens when I have to move them together. There's my gray point, my midtone, and my black point. I can actually have some black here so that the kids can see what they need. And I don't need the midtones to be too dark, but I do need the whites, right, to be a little whiter. Now we have something we can actually see a little better. So these types of adjustments, as well as your contrast adjustment, are the things that you can play with. And you can see what happens with exposure goes up and down. You've got some things you can play with. But I frequently have to do this with pencil drawings when the kids shoot them. Or the kids have to do it. I don't have to do it. Students, again, when they shoot their work, frequently will need to do things like rotate. And notice that if I hold the Alt button down, the rotate switches go in the other direction. So you don't have to rotate all the way around to get it to go a particular way. And then, again, I'm going to crop because I don't need the excess stuff over here. If it's been shot properly, first of all, this is out of focus, but if it's been shot properly, this should crop in nice and square, but you can bring it in. Because that whole object is the assignment, I need all of it, but sometimes you can crop into the work a little bit, and you don't have that white border. And then you can go back and do whatever adjustments you might need. Contrast will help here a little bit. As will, bringing in my highlights a smidge, and brightening that up just a little bit, which we could also do here with the shadows. So there's different different ways you can achieve similar ends. Not necessarily right and wrong. One will work better for you than others. The other thing about these, not that one, not that one, this one. See, we have this version and we have this version. This version is much better color corrected than this one. This is a great option for us to look at the temperature and make it bluer, and then make it redder maybe a little bit. Take the saturation down. That's really green. Wow. Nope, I guess we can't do that because we need the glass to be green. Still. Tough to do. This is why you want to have the white balance set properly on your camera. Really highly recommended. And then we do the same thing here, rotate, crop, blah, blah. Same idea. Oh, and then we're back to the beginning. So those are pretty much the big controls on iPhoto, and hopefully if you didn't know that already, you now have some of that information to work with. And you should be all set. So, go to town here. These are the tools that I expect you to use for your for correcting your 10 photos that you have in your VoiceThread that you also sent me in a zip file. So go to your folder on your laptop and edit them as needed. Some of them didn't need editing, right? I mean, I think we would all agree that you probably have one or two that just didn't need anything or didn't need much. But on the other hand, some of you have some that need pretty significant either cropping, straightening, color correction, using the shadows slider to bring out the dark areas, make them a little bit lighter, those kinds of things. Please do that and then upload them to your VoiceThread. Reorganize them so it's before and after, and on the after picture do a little comment that explains what you did. It will take a little while, but I think it's worth it, and again, do the ones that you think need the editing, or that I thought need the editing, because you have my comments too, so run with that, and give me a shout if you get stuck at any point. If you have a different image editor you would prefer to use, if you really love Sumo when you play with it, or you have Photoshop, or you have Photoshop Elements, by all means, use what you're most comfortable with. But this is sort of the baseline, has the tools you need, will get you through that basic image editing. That's all I'm expecting. So you use what you're comfortable with and what's fastest for you. And again, ask questions, either in the Q&A or shoot me an email, and I will get right back to you. So have fun with your image editing adventure.